Welcome to the Crafting Character Podcast. Steve Carter here, and in association with my good friends at Preaching Today, The Ascent Leader, and Food for the Hungry, I bring you a podcast that, if I do my job right, will hopefully help you get better at the craft of preaching and teaching and communication. And at the same time, my sole desire is to have your character always lead the way. And today I'm joined with a dear friend, Luke Norsworthy. He's a pastor, senior minister at Westover Hills Church in Austin, Texas. And he's been pastoring a group of people who have gone through a lot of heartache because their college football team has needed a lot of help. But Luke Norsworthy is an author. He wrote God Over Good and Befriending Your Monsters. He has a fantastic podcast called Norsworthy, and it's one of those podcasts that weekly discuss spirituality, Christianity, and anything else that will help you navigate faith in a modern world. And the people that he brings on will stretch you, will remind you, will ground you, will compel you. And he's just brilliant and funny and such a curious learner and teacher. You're going to get a sense of it just right now, like how we often do with our podcast. We give you a little glimpse of someone's sound. And Luke did a teach a number of months ago on the Sermon on the Mount. And I remember listening to it and I was like, I got to get him on the Crafting Character podcast, because the way he injects humor, the way that he is so grounded, the way that he will inspire, the way that he just teaches God's word. Friends, I'm so excited for you to get a chance to meet my friend, Luke Norsworthy. Hear this, and then we'll dive into the conversation.
In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus gives some really overwhelming statements that they're kind of hard to process. Jesus says, do not resist evildoers. Jesus says, don't worry about your life. Jesus says, don't store up treasures on earth. Jesus says, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. And a lot of these statements don't make any sense to us. We probably want to ask Jesus that question: what world are you living in, Jesus? And sometimes we've tried to interpret this teaching and those words literally, which I think kind of falls short of what Jesus is trying to do. Jesus doesn't want anyone to cut off their hand. And then we just kind of reduce it to being just metaphorical, and I think then we've just watered down what Jesus is saying. But I think there's a better way to read that. There's a better way to read these words, and it's not literal, it's not metaphorical, but it's reading in light of the age to come. The fancy theology word is eschatologically. Read these words in light of the age that is to come. Because what Jesus is trying to do is say, the world that you're living in right now isn't it. But there is an age to come that you need to live your life in light of. And so as we read this teaching, the more that it seems overwhelming or impossible or unapplicable to us, it's probably a reminder that we're more rooted in a world that Jesus is calling us to not base our life out of. And these words in which Jesus says, blessed are those who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. Blessed are those who are meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who are persecuted. They don't make sense here, but in the other world that Jesus calls us to live into, it makes sense. So in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is asking us a simple question: what world are you living in? Because there's the one that is to come, and that's where you're supposed to be based in. And in light of this world, there is a function that you and I have to do. There's a job that we've been called to because of this kingdom.
Luke Norsworthy, welcome to the Crafting Character Podcast. We just heard a clip from a message you gave on the Sermon on the Mount from a passage about salt and light. Give us a little background on that teach, and we'll chop it up about your prep.
First of all, thanks for having me. It is my pleasure.
Yeah.
Can we do a part where you explain how you call sermons teaches? I like that. I would just like to know the backstory on it.
That's good. Yeah. We should.
This is your podcast. We can do what you want.
Well, I think I have multiple synonyms
Oh.
Meaning the same word. So like
Yeah.
some people like will call it a preach, some people call it a teach, some people call it a sermon, some people call it a message. I think in the podcast you'll see it interchangeable.
I like that.
And just so it's not like the same word.
I love it.
You know, it's just
Here's the thing. I think you're way cooler than me, and so I'm going to try to incorporate that into my vernacular, because if it's good enough for Steve Carter,
oh my goodness,
it's good enough for me. So the backstory on that teach, how'd that
Please.
sound? Did that sound natural?
that's natural. Yeah.
The backstory is that was the second week in a series on the Sermon on the Mount, which I think is one of the central teach. Like if you're going to start with who Jesus is, I think Sermon on the Mount is a good place to start.
Yeah.
And so I think over a 2-year period, I probably did 33 Sundays
Okay.
teaches on that text. So like 33 Sermon on the Mount sermons.
Okay, yep.
And so I had done the Beatitudes independent and the Lord's Prayer independent. And then I split it up because I felt like my people were like, hey, Jesus did this all in 1 week. Why are you taking like 7 months to do what Jesus did in like an hour or two? So anyway, so when we got into that passage about salt and light, I thought like the big idea is like I want to help articulate this vision of like there is a different world that we are being ushered into, but also it's not just us being ushered into it ourselves, but we now have an active participation in ushering other people into it as well.
One of the things I appreciate whenever I listen to you teach is you have this way to mix heavy and light, whether through your storytelling, whether through humor, whether through not taking yourself so seriously, whether through just the way that you will string a sentence together that almost showcases that another world is possible. Talk about that, because I think there's something unique about how you craft messages that really feels like an extension of who you are in your actual everyday life.
Oh, well, I like, first of all, I appreciate that. That means a lot to me coming from you. I do hope it's me. Like at the end of the day, like this is my experience with who God is. And obviously I want to be faithful to the text and put that as the first and foremost of what we're doing. Like we're not gathering just to hear me talk. One of the prayers that I say a lot, and you heard me say it a couple hours ago, is pour through me or pour through Steve the gift of preaching so that what we hear is a word from you. Because I do believe it transcends just me, but like it is me. Like the word became flesh and dwelt among us. And so I think when I'm giving a teach, that's not a very natural when I said that. Like I want it to be honest to who I am and like honest to what I'm trying to be as a person. And so, man, I think if we can do anything, we can point people to say that there's something beyond what's right in front of us.
Yeah. I sit on this for a second because I feel like for a long time I heard people say, don't have any part of you.
Oh, wow.
When you teach, like they shouldn't know aspects of your life. They shouldn't know what fascinates you or the pieces that you actually like when you're off stage. Like, and so I think there's some people who, whenever they preach, it's just a pericope or chunk of text, and you don't actually ever get to know the communicator. You do this really, really great job that I never feel like you are centering yourself or centering yourself as the hero. But there's a part where, again, when Paul says, imitate me as I imitate Christ, there is a part of that when it's pouring through you that I go, gosh, like I see how he was able to do that, whether with his family or whether in Austin or talk about that. Was that something that, in your development as a communicator has been something that you had to either pull back too much, Luke, or actually step into more parts of showcasing that formation for you?
One of the things that I kind of held on to early on, because maybe I saw the opposite example of this, is that I wanted to tell stories in which I look bad in. Because I think people, we're literally up on a stage and it functions as a pedestal. And so people already think we're better than we actually are just because of the nature of the work that we've been called to do. And like, who wants to go listen to a guy center himself or a lady center herself as like the hero or the hero in like a sermon? Like that's kind of that's a shady move in my opinion. And so I do know that early on, I used to pastor a church outside of Dallas in a town called Denton. And there's one specific family. They're busy professionals. They had kids, and they had a lot on their plate. And they were there, and I really appreciate them. Super supportive of the church. But one of the things I noticed when I was preaching, like if I'm doing a text, like say it's that Matthew 5 text, and I'm doing commentary work, and this is what it means, and this is salt, and this is what it means, and that culture, and this is what the Palestinian understanding of this. Like I would see their heads start to like drop down. But then when I would say, Lindsay and the girls, like my wife and our kids, like literally their heads would turn back up. And I've seen that in multiple different churches where people look up and they connect to a story because it's like human, it's honest. And like, that's kind of disappointing. Like I'd love for the text to have that sort of level of interest, but like we're all people. Like the gospel is revealed in narrative. Like the word didn't become a cool book. Like the word became flesh. And so I think that's part of like the story of the incarnation is that it has to continually be replicated and reincarnated. And so I want it to always be authentic to who I am. And I mean, it's weird because you say it like I do enough. Some people say, Luke doesn't do enough of it. And everyone has like their perspective on what is enough and what is not enough and what is too much vulnerability. And one is like, hey, you're up there, using the pulpit as like your counseling couch to work out. So there's like this weird balance. And I don't know if I ever hit it or not, but I do know. Yeah, people listen.
Yeah, they do, and I've seen how you've put together your notes, and just kind of arranged your manuscript. I'm curious: is there kind of like a formula or a path at which you typically go? Okay, here's what I'm looking for. Here's kind of my process to get to a point that's ready for the platform to develop. Share.
If you can look over that screen, there's a dry erase board. And so I have a checkmark system, like for where a sermon's supposed to be in the writing process. And if you want, can I nerd out for a second?
Yes, please. I saw all these checks, and I'm like, what does the 3 checks mean or 4 checks? So tell me.
Okay, so I've got the system where it's they're individual slats of dry erase board that are magnetized to another board. And so each week, like I'll rotate it up. And so every week it gets closer. So I think I was gone last week. Steve Carter's number 2 right there. Like that's you. You dominate.
Put me in, coach.
Yeah, red means done. Like it's done. So stop working on it. But underneath that, like I'll have the next 10 sermons. And so the first check mark is like, I've got a Word document. I've got like the idea. I've got the text. I know what I want to do with that. So the very bottom is, we've got our 50th anniversary for a church. And so it's just 50th, there's a check mark. I know what I'm doing. I've got I've got an idea for that service and that sermon.
That real quick, is that for that 50th, because I can just see 50th, is 50th a date that could be 25 weeks from there? Or is that literally 10 weeks?
That's literally, there's 10 of those. It's 10 weeks out from now.
So does every week you have to move up?
Yeah, every week. Every Monday I come in and I dry erase, I erase the stuff on the top and then I pull everyone up.
Okay.
Yeah, because I want it to it kind of cycles through. It's like the big board, like a player gets drafted, he's off. Now you move someone up. And so the next one, it's green. That's do my commentary work, my text work. And, roughly if you want percentages, that's probably 30% of the sermon is done at that point. The next one is like I get to an outline. And so that's going to be, tell a story that illustrates salt and light. Like, what does that look like? I might not even have it then, but I know where I want it to go. And so functionally, that's an outline. It's 60% of the way done. The red check mark, which is roughly 90% of the way done, it has everything. And then I take that and I do a Thursday focus group where I run through the sermon. And that'll be like the last update from, usually do that on Thursday. Come in here, spend an hour to update it after that, print it off, and I'm done. I don't look at it again until Saturday night. And so, there's a check mark. I was a pole vaulter back in the day. While you were playing basketball, I was a pole vaulter. And everyone looks at a pole vaulter and sees like how they jump over the bar. But what they don't see is there are 3 check marks on the runway. Huh. And so there's a check mark that's roughly 14 steps back from where you're going to start, or 16, depending on how long your stick is and all that kind of stuff. But so from where you're starting, and then there's a check mark for where your second right. So the second time your right foot hits the ground, there's another check mark where you want to make sure your foot hits there. And then all the way in front of the pit where you're jumping off, like there's a takeoff mark. And so you want to hit each of those marks, and then everyone sees what you do, but what they don't realize is all those things before that are actually what prepared you for success.
That's amazing. I love that, because I think most communicators have their pole vaulting story. For me, I have some basketball ones in the development, into the film room, into watching the teach on the backside to figure out which ways I can get better at. But I love that. And just to see the different checks, when do you actually begin? Is it Monday morning, or is it 5 weeks?
Oh, no,
How far do you start?
I typically want to work on one sermon one day each week.
Okay.
Because I like to just like have it in the brain, and I think the brain works to completion.
Yeah.
And so it's like a crock pot. Like I think you put it in there, leave it, come back the next week, and then I'm going to pick it back up. And then I like the different ideas that I can focus on the different days. I'm an Enneagram 7. I like the uniqueness of each one. And so I'll work on 4 different sermons this week.
Okay, so play that out from a schedule wise. Like Monday morning, you've got that one that's coming.
Yeah. I'm ahead right now because I'm coming off a study break, which is why you were in here preaching. Thanks for that. So I'm a little bit ahead, but typically on Wednesday, I'll do the one 2 weeks out and make sure that's finalized. Thursday, it's the final run through. Monday and Tuesday, it's whichever one. Sure. But I've been doing this for so long. I write sermons every day, and I put in some amount of work. Last Sunday, I had a guest speaker in, and then I flew to LA. Well, I'm on a plane, and I did 2 check marks on the plane, because there was a 3-hour flight to LA. And so it didn't matter which one it is. For me, it's always like you just have to put your 500 words in every day. That's a reference to Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art. It's
a great book.
Every day you do something and you're rewarded for showing up. And so every day I'm doing something for any sermon. And honestly, like at this point, I've done this for so long, it doesn't matter which one I'm doing because I'm just getting further and further ahead.
So you really live by the 500 words?
Yes, I write, yes.
And for those of you listening, Luke is prolific when it comes to podcasts. One of the first actual podcasters that I would start listening to, and we were just talking today, like he's done over 500.
That's a lot.
Yeah, like every week, just
obsessive.
And so, and then also written 2 great books. We'll talk about that more later. But like the 500 words, that could be you just kind of chopping it up over some concept from Matthew 5 in the commentaries or the questions, or that could be 500 words of you just telling a story. Or is there more to it?
When I'm like writing a book, it could be as like open-ended as nebulous as that. Like it could be just, it doesn't matter what it is, especially the early book writing stage. You just got to get something on the paper. For this, like I know what I want each one to get to at each part. Like I want to know, hey, this is first day, the text work has to be done. Maybe a couple big ideas that you have in bold so that next time you pick it up, you go, okay, this is where I'm going. So it's progress somewhere in the series, especially I write series now like all together instead of like individually. And so I might have something that's going to go in a completely different sermon, but it's still Sermon on the Mount, and I know it's going to go in there. And maybe initially I thought that story was going to go, the Beatitudes, but instead I used it at the very end. So I think there's flexibility when you have the discipline to do it every day.
Yeah, totally.
And so I'm flexible enough to go wherever. And the same way, like for me with podcasting, like I'll read a book, I'll have the big ideas of what I want to talk about. Honestly, if you grab a copy of your book, whichever, I think I read a rough copy of it, but like you just see notes on the front page. Like you can pick up most of these books in here that we're using a podcast, and I don't have a formula. I'm going to talk to this one first and this one second. It's just like I know these different moves that I can get to, and it doesn't matter how I get there.
So talk about the moves when you're doing a narrative text. So you're doing the Sermon on the Mount, and you pull this one kind of chunk, which is fantastic. You're talking about salt, the earth. What are there questions that formulate within that you're like, I have to answer these when you're just going after a text, or are you kind of like trying to listen to, man, what's the soul of this? Or like, what do you have framing questions that you
like every time the same questions?
Yeah, that you look for?
I don't. Like, do you have the same? Like, you have main questions you get to each time?
I'm constantly looking for like, where's the ache? What's the good desire that can come out of this? And then what's the cultural stronghold that this could actually?
Yeah.
If people were to embody salt of the earth or to like let their light shine, what would that actually do with isolation, or what would that do with? But it's just it's me trying to figure out felt need, good desires, because I think people want to actually be salt of the earth. They don't always know how. And if they did it, what kind of promise in this world of brokenness, like would they be able to? But it's just there. It doesn't mean every text is gonna get it, but it just helps me go like just constantly look for the energy or the feeling or the emotion.
Yeah. No, I like that. That makes sense. What's the ache? I'm thinking through the sermon I heard you preach today. I'm going, okay, yeah, you got the cultural analysis down. Like you did the exegesis of culture. Application is very strong.
Yeah.
The ache up front, I see exactly how you did that, and that came through really well.
Yeah.
As I've told you before, I think your application stuff is an area for me to grow into. I think that's you're really strong there, and that's something that I'm constantly going, okay, I know I can get better with this. So I like the way you approach it. I typically don't have questions when I go into it, other than my own curiosity, whatever pops up, and I'm just going to follow that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's the right way to do it or not, but it's just the only way I've ever done it. The same with the podcast. I remember hearing Bill Simmons talk about early in his podcast career. He got pitched Jimmy Stewart, some NASCAR guy. And because he was a big name, they're like, oh, this is going to be good for me. And
Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Stewart's It's a Wonderful Life. But Jimmy, did you hear that? Did you hear that? Jimmy Stewart.
Okay, I don't do NASCAR.
But it might be Jimmy Stewart. I don't know. I think Jimmy Johnson, but it could be.
Steve Stewart is one of my elders who said your sermon was great. And he asked if Willow Creek was a Church of Christ church. I said, no, it's not. But he said, the sermon was great. Nevertheless, Bill Simmons has this big name NASCAR driver on. It's a big enough name for me to forget. It's so big, I can't even hold on to it. Big name guy. He does it. Podcast was terrible. And he said afterwards, I realized I don't ever want to have an interview with someone that I'm not passionate to talk to.
Yeah.
And I think that's the authenticity, the humanity in a sermon is you have to care about it. And if it's a text that you don't care about, it's going to show through. And I think that's why I have to do this so far in advance, because I want to make sure I'm really passionate and I have a chance to live this out. I'm doing some stuff on parenting, or that was my last series. And the nice thing is writing this 10 weeks out, it's I've got 2.5 months to be a good parent. So I don't feel like a complete fake. Instead of being Thursday night, hey kids, we're going to pray tonight for the first time ever. It's well, at least you have 2.5 months to fake it before you get there.
Right.
And so it's just I want to give it time to become authentic with me.
Yeah. Well, I think that is something that I do sense with you, is you are so genuinely curious. When I listen to your podcast and I hear the questions that you ask, and I just realize that's an actual skill, not just to be able to ask somebody questions, but to go man, this is what excites me. And also in the back of my mind go, this is how or what could actually be exciting or encouraging or convicting or inspiring or challenging for your congregation. And I think you do that really well. It's one of the things I most appreciate is you take a phrase in this last teach, the salt of the earth, and you take that phrase and there's a sense in it where you're I didn't know what that phrase meant. And then you talk about the cultural analysis. We always think of it means character, but then you break it down to the real function of what it means to be people in the kingdom of God, the people of God. And then you bring it to this story of an Afghan refugee that you meet. And you didn't, but the way that you came across this person was through other contacts from a friend. Talk about that, because again, it's this mixture of curiosity, which every communicator, if you're an emerging voice, if you're not curious, you're going to miss out on what's deep. But then it's also you're connecting the dots ability out of that curiosity that I think is next level. Oh. It's literally next level. But talk about this Afghan story, because I think it's really, really beautiful.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And that story is deeply meaningful, because it was one where it was almost so personal, I didn't want to include it. Yeah. And I'd rather say, Luke's a dumb dad who forgot to do something. That's an easy story for me to tell. But this one was heavy. And for your listeners, what happened, one day I'm in my office, I'm just grinding away, and I'm finishing up, it's 5:30 or something like that, and I've just blinds closed, doors shut, I'm just working, just loving my life. I love getting to study scripture and write. It's just, I'm so grateful I get to do that. Step out of my office, I walk down three doors down.
Terrible band.
But my friend Ramjan is in there, and he's got a buddy who I've never seen before, and he's sitting in there. And Ramjan is from Rwanda, and his friend is Afghani, and they play soccer together. And so I introduced myself. Hey, what's going on? This is back when a lot of the stuff with Afghanistan was starting to go down, and I didn't know anything about it. I'm not on Fox News or CNN all day long, and so I didn't fully have an understanding of the breadth of the tragedy that was happening. And I meet this guy, Javed, who's telling me about his story. And his brother had been killed. He was a reporter because he spoke out against someone. And now he's got 4 sisters who are back in Afghanistan. They're trying to get him out. And how do you get him out? I don't know. And so I was just like, hey, can I just share this on social media? I don't know what to do. And, I put it on social media, got connected to some friends who had some connections, people who had been working for years in the refugee community, people who military over there, and we worked and worked and worked. And I think at the time of the story, like I didn't have an answer. And at one point I had visas and passports and documents and pictures and descriptions of all the family members who were trying to get out, and I didn't know what I'm doing. Farsi, I don't know Farsi. I don't understand how to do any of this stuff, but I'm just trying to follow leads. And I just got to the point where I was like, I don't think I have a solution for this. Let me say that again. I knew I didn't have a solution for this. And I was disappointed, crestfallen, just because like Java's a nice guy, like a young man he's the kind of guy you're like, wow, that's a person of character, right? Like he worked so hard to try to get his sisters out. I think the story I told like just kind of leaves, and I wanted to do something and overwhelmed, and I don't know how the story ends. Yeah. But you were here today and you saw the rest of the story. And, for your audience, maybe I think it's all right to say this, but Javed had 4 sisters. 2 of them passed away. They were at the airport when there was an explosion in, I guess it was maybe in August, a year and a half ago. And the text messages are haunting. Hey, can you do something? The Taliban's like they're hitting my family. They're hurting them, and we haven't heard from 2 sisters, and we're reaching out and nothing. And silver lining of the story is that one of his sisters was at church today, and he was there. And there's cousins and other family members that have appeared. And the beautiful thing about our church is like there's a group of people that kind of just, hey, there's a problem, there's a need, we want to be friends. And so now one of the ladies, I don't know if you got to meet her or not, but they refer to her as like grandma. Yeah. And it's really beautiful, and these sweet people who've gone through just the worst. Like literally, like there's, I'm saying that obviously Rwanda's just as bad, what happened there as well. But to see that, and then to see it now go, wow, like you preached and looked out and you saw 9, 10
easy
people.
Easy, yeah.
Easy. And the cool thing is like they weren't just sitting in one row. Like there's a couple different places. Yep. And obviously like there's some different head attire than you would see from most Westerners, but you could go, oh wow, like they're here. And like you can notice that, wow, this is the rest of the story.
Well, and it's fun because I love being a student of preaching, and to be able to watch and hear you deliver a message. And I had heard this story, and I knew that this was a sermon I wanted to kind of unpack because I liked the cultural, I liked the storytelling, because you actually tell this young man's story, but it doesn't end with, and we got all 4 of them out, and we got da-da-da. Like you were setting up the point of the function of being salt of the earth is also really messy. Yeah. And it's really hard. But but there's this sense within us that of what we believe this world to be, and we have to work towards that. Yeah. And so like I just thought from listening to that sermon months ago, I'm not sure how that fully ends. Yeah. And then I get done teaching, and probably the second person I meet today is this young man, and then I meet his sister next to the grandma that, and her words to me was amazing. She goes, I just want to say I'm sorry. I wasn't on my phone, but I'm translating for others that aren't able to be here. And I want them to know this message. And just the heart of that, and just go, gosh, this Westover is becoming this salt of the earth, light of the nations kind of community. Yeah. It was a real beautiful full circle. But in that delivery, you have this curiosity. You're able to connect dots from salt to Palestinian culture to this real life example. But you also held it. and you held the tension. Most people wouldn't do that. I'm curious about that. Like, I think most people are going to look for just to make it feel better.
Yeah.
And I think that you do a great job of holding that tension of like, and again, Austin, I would assume is just with UT here, just a really, really smart city in so many ways. Culturally, it's, it's like Portland everyone always says, I feel like, in so many ways, with music. But like, you weren't afraid of the tension.
Yeah.
Is that something that when you are crafting messages, you're looking for how far does this tension, can I extend it? Can I? Yeah. I don't. Does that resonate?
No. I think
make
that's.
sense?
I think that's honest to my lived experience.
Yeah.
And so I want to be honest to my experience, and I don't know. I think it's William James talked about like winter Christians and summer Christians, and like some people are like who are more like, hey, it's Easter, it's Resurrection Sunday, which like that's the story of Christianity. But some of us feel like we're more stuck in Good Friday, and you're like, yeah, but it's the here but not yet kind of stuff, like that eschatological tension that we're in.
Yes.
And for me, it's I don't know if it's growing up with a mom with chronic illness and just going, oh yeah, cool, it'd be nice if this got better, and it never did. And just going, that's my lived experience. My dad's a psychologist who helps people with chronic illnesses, and you go, that's going to influence the way I see the world. Is like that's the world I grew up in, and I'm not the only one who ever had something that wasn't like a picture perfect childhood. I mean, that's life for most of us. But for me, just to be authentic to my experience of faith, it's always going to be there. It's always going to be messy, and some people really connect to the like a nice, neat packaged message that, hey, I just need the good news I'm going to get through the week. And I by no means like dumping on someone else because that connects to them. But it's just not me.
Yeah.
And so I can only be who I am.
Yep.
And I want to try to like stretch my preaching so that I can connect to everyone. And I don't want to make this just about me. But I also know that, Matthew writes a gospel to Jewish people. Like that's his thing. That's how he's going to write. And Paul, he writes to people in Rome. And so he writes in that context. He writes to Philippians and gives them you're not citizens of this world, but like you have a different citizenship. Like he's writing to people because he knows their lived experience. And I'm just trying to be faithful to how I see the world.
This is fascinating. I've never heard anybody talk about it like this lived experience. What do you do when your lived experience is fraught with pain or silence from God or sadness or disappointment? How do you not let that leak out on the stage, and also stay wildly open to almost seeing that lived experience be stretched within you?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, I think that's a discipline of having preaching that's not just based on like, hey, this is my quiet time this week, and so I'm going to tell you. And so there's a discipline about preaching through a book, or like our more high church friends with preaching through the liturgical calendar. Like you have some accountability to something that transcends you. And so I try to find rhythms of things that aren't just what I think and what I like.
Yeah.
And so I want it to be honest to me, but sometimes the reason I have 10 weeks, the next 10 sermons up there is like, I need 2.5 months to get behind that.
Yeah.
And there's some sermons that I can preach that 5 minutes after reading the text. I've got that one. I've been living that one. Other ones are like, you're going to give me 2 months and I can get there.
Yeah.
But that's how I can be faithful is I think you give it time, and eventually I think the Spirit can give you something to say. Because like you said, like I don't want to reduce it to just my lived experience.
Right.
And I remember in seminary, I had a professor who said, if I ever preach discipleship just to what I'm living up to, then I'm selling it short. And like 20-year-old sophomoric Luke was like, oh, you're not a real Christian. You don't know what you're talking about. This is like a 50-year-old man who's been doing work in the church for 3 decades. Yeah. And at the time I was like, oh, this he needs to read his Bible more. Yeah. And now I'm like, oh, Luke, no, you just need to be like, grow up. And that's where I am.
That's so good. The piece I'm curious too about that is there is your lived experience, and then as a shepherd and pastor and preacher, you have a pulse or an ear to your congregation's lived experience.
Yeah.
How do you run that tension of you probably, stuff that you're processing through could become a great after Easter sermon series 2023, 2024. But there's stuff in your congregation that maybe you see. How do you discern, oh, this is a good little biopic of what God's teaching me in this season or stretching me? This is like what our congregation needs to hear. Do you have like a liturgy per se of like, hey, here are some seasons, like you're doing a parenting series coming up. Yeah. Like, is there are pockets where you're like, hey, this is just what I've heard in our congregation time and time again, and we gotta spend a few weeks. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. We do this prayer of the people exercise, which comes from like our high church friends, but it's really like we just pass out cards and say, what do you need to pray about? And there's one that's on the board, and it says, I'm thankful that God is allowing me to find the joy in living and in dying. That card came in 3 months ago, I think, and I'm doing a series about that, like built around that card in August. And so it's not really like that timely because it's been like 3 months, but that's one way where it's like I listen and I go, wow, there's something here. In my lunch group, I had a beloved woman named Amy who told her story, and I was like, this is the prodigal son story. And I saved that, and a couple months later, we did 3 or 4 weeks on the prodigal son, used Henry Nouwen stuff, which is just brilliant. Like had the, who did the painting that's so famous?
Rembrandt?
Yeah. I had a print off that was on my board for a couple, maybe a month and a half as I was writing that, just like, oh yeah, right there. But it's taking those stories and just holding on to them and just listening. And it's like the same thing with like podcasting. Like I'm reading your book and I'm hearing you going, okay, there's something in here I can do this with. Or even one of the stories of yours that I've told in a sermon is your story, the Jalen Rose story about, you talk about it on my podcast, we talk about it here. I'm just telling you that. That wasn't a question. I probably should have more of a question. But you told that story about like, dad's not walking in. And so I'm going to hold on. And it doesn't matter if we make the big dance. It doesn't make if we make the Final Four. Like he's not walking in. And like how that was motivated. Like I wrote that down. I was like, hey, I can use that in a couple months. Or I can use that maybe, I think I used that within a month and a half of after you telling me that.
Yeah.
And so part of this board for me is like you have the folders to drop stuff in.
Yeah.
And so it gives you a category to go, okay, this is a theme. I'm going to write it down. And if it gets worked in the week of, cool. But at least I have an idea for where it can go.
Well, I love the idea of the prayers of the people because that's a great one discipline to be praying for the people, but it's also great like to feel that ache and of what people like, oh, this could be a sermon series. But you're so right of having the different places and outlets to take a concept, to take an idea, to have a place to process it, whether that Thursday group or to be able to have the board to check it off. But it's like you can show your work and you can and that work and that structure, I think actually breeds freedom for more ideas, more creativity, more opportunity for it to marinate within. You do it. Talk more about that Thursday lunch. You shared that that's where you do a run through. Yeah. How many? Is it the same people every time?
No. And give credit where credit is due. Rob Bell told me this.
Yeah.
I was in LA the week before my first Sunday here, and
7 years ago.
Yeah, seven years ago. And I happened to have lunch with Rob, and he said that's what he did. And I was like, cool. Like I got to the airport, got to LAX after our lunch. I called Nancy, who's the assistant I get to work with, and I said, hey, can you get like some people for lunch tomorrow? Doesn't matter who it is, but I'm gonna do a rough draft of my sermon. And the first week she gets 20 people to show up the day after. And I was like, the day after I called her, I was like, okay, let's tone that down a little bit. A little
expensive lunch.
Little eager. No, I don't pay for it. Like I tell them to brown bag it. Like this isn't.
That's awesome.
I don't have that Willow budget. Come on, man. I don't have that Marcel budget either. And so Nancy just has, she just reaches out to people, hey, 5 of you to come in, doesn't matter who it is. Anyone's welcome. And then what I do is tell them, hey, you can eat your lunch, but I'm going to go through a rough draft of my sermon, which means like I'm going to read a lot of it, don't have it memorized. And then first 30 minutes is me talking, second 30 minutes is them talking. And so I've just got a couple questions I go through. First one is if you had to, if you go to lunch with someone who didn't hear that sermon for some reason, let's say they're in the children's ministry, what is your 15-second answer to the question, what was that sermon about?
Genius.
That's the first one. And so that tells me, what am I trying to say? Are they hearing it? Did it connect? Okay. The next question is something like, if you had to remember this sermon in 6 to 8 weeks, what story, illustration, verse would you remember? Which is another way of saying, like, what was the stickiest part for you? And so I'm asking, okay, what part really connects it to you? And then the third one is, like, what was bad about the sermon? Like, what didn't connect? Would you want me to develop more? And I'm basically saying, hey, what's wrong? And every time I ask those questions, like, I go around the room, people answer, and I'm asking follow-up questions. If I have a specific story, like, hey, does this work or not? Did you hear this? And so I'm just running through everything with them. And I tell them, whatever you say in here becomes my intellectual property. So if you say it, I own it. And they all laugh about it, but I'm like, I'm serious.
I'm serious. Well, I like that because there's an old preacher 100 years ago. He wrote a book, Jew It. Ken Davis, who's a mentor, used to always tell me this, is that if you can't, Jew It would say, if you can't preach your message in one sentence, it's not ready to be preached. And what you're doing in 15 seconds is trying to see, was I more clever than clear?
Oh, that's a good line.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that clarity of like, oh, this is it. And I think is so helpful. It's sometimes, do you ever like leave those times fired up? Like I'm so excited. I got something. This is amazing.
Yeah.
And do you ever leave those times going, oh, this is not the way I thought it was going to go?
Well, those are like, I'm locking the door. Don't bother me for the next 2 hours. We're going to fix this.
Yeah.
And usually, like, I get a lot of great stuff from those people. And here's one of the things I found out is that most people don't know how to fix a sermon, but they know how to tell you when it's wrong.
Ah, that's good.
And so, like, I don't expect them to solve the problem, but if you tell me where the problem is, like, I can work on that. And but even if it's wrong, like, I figured it out up front. And it's like preseason. Like, you figure, okay, this lineup doesn't work. Well, we'll change the lineup for the regular season.
Yes.
Or in the NBA, like, regular season is functioning the preseason. We'll get you ready for the playoffs. I want to get that basketball metaphor for you correct. But yeah, I feel way more confident. Yeah. And during COVID, I did a couple of these, but I was like, I'm over Zoom. Yeah. Like, I did 2 or 3. Like, it's me standing in my living room, and I'm literally on this air track, which is like a little tumbling mat. So my cheerleading daughters could like do their passes in our living room, and I'm standing on it, and like my TV's in the background. I'm like, this is trash. I just don't want to do it. But when I started back doing these again, I was like, oh wow, like I feel so much more relieved going into Sunday because you've already taught it. Like you already know where the points that connect to our humanity is. Like you know what works. It's just you leave the office, and honestly, it helps me because I take Fridays off.
Yeah.
And so I can relax on Friday because I already know what I got.
That's right. And and I love that you have different people come in and are able to really kind of break down. And it's not like the same person who knows you with it. You know, it's like everyone's got fresh eyes on it, which is pretty cool. That's amazing.
Well, to be fair though, and I hope my church isn't listening to this, but I do have like the frequent flyer club, which are what, like these always give good feedback. So they're getting called in for Easter. Like Easter, like you guys are the best ones if you get that Easter invite.
That's awesome. That's awesome. One of the pieces, and a little bit of a shift to the character piece, you have a playfulness about you. Like you'll joke, there's a real lightness to like how you take yourself. I feel like you take yourself so seriously. You love people. You really, really care. There's this genuine piece. And a couple years ago, like right during the time of COVID, I feel like COVID dropped, and then your book came. Was it like when did it come out? 2 weeks? 2 months?
It was May.
It was May. Yeah, it was like 2 months after COVID, right?
When did COVID started? When Rudy Gobert touched all the microphones. It's during regular season, right? For NBA.
March,
yeah.
Yep. So
March, April, like 2 months after that. Yeah.
You write this book, Befriending Your Monsters, and I got a hold of it. Man, I think I was so in trying to finish up Thing Beneath the Thing. Yeah. It had been, somebody had gotten it from me, sent it to me. I end up going through a run of reading just after you're done writing. You're like, oh my goodness. And I was like, The Thing Beneath the Thing and Befriending Your Monsters could be like siblings. There's things that you went a total different direction that I was like, oh my goodness, this is so good. And I love the emotional health piece. I love digging deeper into the why. I love just the concept. Talk a little bit about this, because I do think as pastors and communicators, we've like almost silenced and shamed those monsters. The title alone, Befriending Your Monsters, and how that relates to a pastor and a character. Talk about that.
Well, yes, when I read your book, after mine had been out, I was like, yep, this is just the cooler version of it. You did, like, your cover is so good. And so I was like, yep, he won. He got the better cover. But you're right, it's like the same idea, because your monsters, typically monsters, are underneath your bed.
Yep.
The thing beneath the thing. Like, everyone looks at, what's on the surface, but what's presenting isn't often what the problem is.
Yep.
And so as a pastor, like, I think everyone has to ask, like, what's motivating you? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to, like, fix? What are you trying to solve? Like, there was, when I was in college, we had this intramural sport called water ball, which, like, it's kind of like water polo, but it's more like wrestling. And like, I was a high school wrestler, so it was like my favorite intramural sport. And I always knew, like, some people would get in the water and it was just like, hey, we're getting after this. Like, there's a lot of violence in it. No striking, of course, but it's like you push people underneath the water till they let go of the ball. But there's some people that would come in there and be like, dude, your dad didn't tell you he loved you enough. Like, calm down. Like, go call your father. Get out of the water. Don't play this game. Go talk to your dad and work that out. Yeah. Like, and I think all of us are doing that. Like, on stage, like, as a preacher, like, you have a huge temptation. I have a huge temptation to use that as a way to work out some issue. And I don't know what I want to work out this week or next week, but it's always there. And so there's always something that we have a propensity to use church to solve for us. And if I don't ask that question for myself and go, okay, what are you running from? What are you escaping? Like, I'm a 7. I love to escape. I'm very good at it. One of the best, honestly. I'm like the 3 of escaping. Like, I am so successful about it. But it could be that. Like, I come here and, like, if you preach a decent sermon, people in church are typically nice and affable and they want to tell you good job. It's easy to go, hey, you know what? I might have been a jerk to my wife and not thoughtful to my kids, but, they say I'm a good guy. And now they see just a tiny fraction of who you are. Yeah. But if your craft is good enough, you can ignore your character.
Yeah.
And
the way you set this book up, it was the second section that really, really got me. The first one, like, all good. But then the way that you had titled it, the 3, it's like
the 3 monsters?
Yeah, it's like comparison.
Yeah.
And it just, you like went after these 3 in a level of detail. And I've always been curious. I never asked you this. Why did you choose those 3? What was it about comparison? Was
success and more.
And more.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think part of the idea comes from, in different cultures and different continents, you have similar monsters that appear. And so you have, like, the Kraken or the water monsters. Like, there's varied names across different, even Native American tribes, like, have their own version of that. And I think it speaks to the fact that there are the same problems that we all deal with. There's nothing new under the sun. Like, we're all struggling with the same stuff. And so part of it was just to work as a pastor and going, I've heard so many people struggle with this. Yeah. And, as a 7, it's more. Like, I live in more. Yeah. Like, that is my jam. I go to. But comparison has been real too. Like, you're a pastor, and, like, early on, I followed a guy named Matt Chandler. Yeah. And, like, that's really great for your self-esteem when you're 21 and you're like, oh, wow, like, this guy's like a shooting star. Like, there are just a handful of guys who can communicate like him. And honestly, since then, of all the preachers I've been around, there's maybe 2 or 3 that are as good of communicators as him. And so early on, it's like, oh, wow, I'm comparing myself to this person because I didn't know how to judge if I'm doing well or not. And so the easiest thing was, like, who's this woman or who's this man in front of me preaching? And I'm going to be a preacher too, so I'm just going to gauge my success off who they are. Yep. And so I think I went with those because they're honestly, they're me, but also I think a lot of us just struggle with the same stuff. I don't think there's really much new underneath the sun. Yeah.
Well, and I think, especially in pastoral ministry, you can start out with such good desires.
Yeah,
the good desires. Like, I want to help someone. I want to help someone find a life in Christ. I want to be there to pray, and it's like these monsters just start to appear. That you're looking to the right, and you're like, why do they seem farther ahead? And you look to the left, and why does that church seem to be bigger?
Yeah.
You know, and then all of a sudden it's like, it feels outside you, but it's actually, you feel it all in your body of, I think I feel like I should have more.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not doing a good enough job. And it's like all these loops start coming. And I've said this before on this podcast. When I was at Willow, I couldn't stand like 1:15 every Sundays because when I got the attendance numbers and the budget numbers, and you're just like, somehow
You're already fragile, right?
Oh
after
yeah,
you preach.
totally. And somehow like that number, you could have. Oh man, God was working. It was amazing. And you're like, oh, I really thought there were more people there this weekend. You know what I mean?
But the ridiculous thing is, like, the attendance really would be on last Sunday's sermon. Like,
yeah,
you know?
That's actually true. Yeah. But it's all of that piece though that you're like, I got to know how to. And I think for so long I shamed them. I didn't know how to befriend them.
Oh wow!
And I stuffed them, and I just was like, make them go away. Just don't feel that, like, or go, you know. But until I could actually go, no, I'm feeling this.
Yeah.
Talk about that, because I think that there are, I'm sure even one of those that are, someone's listening, a comparison. I desire for more, which for me, what I've had to ask myself is, how much is enough?
Yeah.
How much is enough ups teaching? How much is enough money? How much is enough followers on Instagram? How much is enough? And for so long, I was so afraid to answer that question because scarcity was driving me. So then the success piece. But like, give us some handles on that. Because I really think every pastor should read Befriending Your Monster. I think it's just a really, really helpful book to like step out of fear, step into light.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I want you to explain to me when enough is enough, because I would probably need to read that book because, I might have written a chapter about it, but that's still an ongoing struggle for me where like it never seems like there's enough. And it always like presents like as a new form. Like there's a real sick thing about a podcast. I use Podbean, which is a host that I've used for a long time. They used to sponsor me, so I really liked them back then. Now they don't pay me anymore, so I don't. But like the first time I started the podcast, I didn't realize you could track listens. Like I didn't know. And so when I'm starting the podcast, again, this is 8.5, 9 years ago when I'm starting. So it's like the dark ages. And I started podcast, like they just weren't around.
Yeah.
And so I'm a couple weeks in, I realized, oh wow, you can track numbers for this. This is cool. And so I start looking at that. And so every day I'm thinking, oh wow, like I'm finally going to get 1,000 downloads in one day. And like, I'm looking every day, like well, maybe if I'd put 2 out and like one's gonna be late at night and one's the next morning, like I was just being stupid. And then finally the day came and I got 1,000 downloads on a podcast. And I was like, this is awesome. Cause the graph was like 0 to 1,000. Like that's all it showed. Yeah. And I got the 1,000 downloads and I thought there was gonna be like confetti and explosions and like Annie Downs, like with the confetti thing going off. Yay! Yeah. Like, right, we're best friends now or something. And what they did instead is they just changed the graph. And all of a sudden, it didn't go from 0 to 1,000, it went from 0 to 5,000 or 0 to 10,000 or whatever number that was just like, wait a minute, I thought I just got to that point. And for me, it's always like, there's always gonna be more. Like there's always gonna be the next level that you can get to. Oh, wow, you wrote a book, cool. What about, can you write a third book? Or you did this, but what about that? Yeah. And there's always more. And one of the things I'm learning is that in those monsters, the way that they appear, saying that you're not enough or saying that you need more or saying that you're not successful enough, is I think there's actually an invitation that exists within them. And, recently I've been struggling with some resentment stuff. And over the last 2 weeks, I've really had this epiphany about like resentment is a reminder that I need to carve out the internal space to withstand criticism because that's always going to happen. And second of all, it needs to be a reminder that whenever those like that resentment pops up, like you have to acknowledge that it exists. You can't just stuff it down, but you only can give it 15 seconds. Yeah. And there's only so much time that you can mess around with it. Otherwise it takes over. And so I'm learning to see these things as an invitation that God is underneath them, like that God is using and working in all things for the good, even in these like fear-driven sort of thoughts that pop in my head. But I know if I give them too much space and you don't befriend them, but instead you try to get rid of them or pretend like they don't exist or just ignore them and just let them grow, what's going to happen is like they're going to take over. Because evil doesn't just like all of a sudden go from 0 to 100. it starts small and it grows, right? The old expression, like you give the devil an inch and he doesn't stop till he has a mile, or whatever the expression is. But evil enters your door first as a guest, but it doesn't leave until it's set itself up as a master.
Wow.
So when it's a guest, learn from it, but don't let it become a master.
Yeah. Wow. Luke, thank you. Thanks for that. I think that just hits me, and I think maybe for some of you listening, that's the resentment piece, or maybe for some of you, you have something in your life that you've just allowed that guest to come, and you have to remember that guest is wanting to be a master.
Yeah.
I always want our people, when they're listening to this podcast, to think about one piece, one kind of thing that they can go, man, I can put this into practice this coming Sunday.
Okay.
What for you? If I just said, hey, because I love you, I love the way you teach, I love the way you communicate and pastor. If there's one bit of information that you're like, hey, maybe you said it, maybe you haven't said it, maybe you want one more stab at saying it, that you would say, hey, for all the listeners of Crafting Character, do this.
All right. Okay. This is kind of a ridiculous thing that I haven't publicly ever talked about. And so we'll put it on here. So don't ever talk to me about this in public. I want to pretend like it didn't happen, but I want to be honest for a second, because this is what I got. I wrestled in high school, and about 2.5 years ago, I got back into grappling, and so I've been training jiu-jitsu. And one of the things about the culture in jiu-jitsu is that you always bow before you walk on the mat. And before you walk off the mat, you bow before you step off into normal, put your shoes back on and stop trying to hurt people. I realized I would bow every time I walked on the mat at jiu-jitsu. And I would always bow, and I'd say, I'm just thankful to be here. Every time I do that. Before class, I'd walk off afterwards, and, hey, I'm so thankful I got to do that. And I realized, dude, you do that at jiu-jitsu, right? Where you're just rolling around in ancient Japanese pajamas while you're trying to choke your friends. And I started had this sense you need to do something about that at church. And so when I preach, before I walk on, I do a bow before I step on the stage. And I go, I'm grateful to be here. And then when I walk off, we have a little door that I can kind of do a backstage exit. Yeah. And so I don't want to make a scene of it. So I exit the stage through the back, and I walk out the back, and no one can see me in the back of the house. And I bow and I go, I'm grateful for this. And that's all that was. Because I found myself, especially during COVID, I would preach a sermon and I didn't feel good about it, and I'd take it home with me.
Wow. And
so I walk on stage with gratitude, and when I leave, I go, I'm grateful I got to do that, but it's over, and I'm going to go home now. Wow. And it was good or it was bad, it doesn't matter, it's done. And so that was kind of me, closing the chapter. I put all the work in. I've been working on this for weeks. I put on my hours. I've memorized it, which is what I do. Doesn't mean everyone has to do that. I worked with my people. I did the best I could. I respected the process, but it's over. And so don't take it home, and don't second guess, and don't regret, and don't shoulda, woulda, coulda yourself into ruining your time with your family. But it's over.
It's over.
And you've given your gift. You're grateful to do it, and move on.
Man, that's a great word. I love that. I love that. Say it one more time. I'm grateful.
When I walk on stage, I bow, and I the jiu-jitsu culture is you kind of I'm going to act this out. I do this right here. It's super subtle. People would not notice, because it's people are looking at you when you're walking on stage, and I don't want to make a scene of it. But it's I'm grateful to get to do this.
Yeah.
And then I bow in gratitude to walk on. And then when I walk off stage, this is the back of the house so people can't see it. So it's a little bit more pronounced and deliberate. But I bow and I say, I'm thankful I got to do this, but it's over. That was my gift to give, and I gave it. And it might have gone perfect. It might have gone terribly, but it's over, and I'm going to leave it there and I'm going to walk away.
Man. Well, Luke Norsworthy, thanks so much for joining us. Please go to Amazon, go to Target, go to Barnes & Noble, get Befriending Your Monsters. Do some work on that. And I'd really love to know when on Instagram when we post this, what's your unique practice to say I'm grateful that you get to do this? Is it a bow? Is it just a prayer? What is it before you
There's
go
a lot of
on stage?
Jiu-jitsu practitioners who are doing the bow. Yeah. Heavily martial art audience.
There's big time here at Preaching Today. So, but we're grateful for you, and thanks so much for tuning in.
Steve, thanks for having me on, man. Yeah. Much respect.
Well, thanks so much for tuning in to the Crafting Character podcast. And again, I'm so thankful to Luke. Go to Amazon. and check out Befriending Your Monsters. It's a fantastic read. I really, I feel like in many ways it's the cousin to The Thing Beneath the Thing. And I loved that book so very much. I'm also so grateful for my friends at Preaching Today. They want to help you get better at the craft and better at having your character lead the way. And man, I find myself often before I'm writing a talk, just in my prep process, going to their website and just diving in. I'm a member. It's been super helpful for me. Also, the Ascent Leader. We've got a great cohort that's dropping in November with the one and only Dave Stone. I'm telling you, he is just a coach. I mean, he's just getting the chance. It's like sitting down with Coach K, and he just has a way to bring out the best. And I'm excited for the pastors, the lead pastors who are going to go on this journey with Dave Stone. He's just an absolute legend. Go to theascentleader.org. You can learn more, sign up for that. There's only a couple spots remaining. It's going to fill up really, really quickly. And then Food for the Hungry. And I'll tell you what, I actually leave tonight to go to the Dominican Republic. And I'm excited because I've been hearing so much about this organization when I lived in Arizona, and I'm excited to see it firsthand. I've been to their home office in Phoenix, but to actually go and see the holistic transformation, I'm really excited. You're going to hear more stories in the future from me about it because I'm just really expectant. So anyways, my friends, thank you so much for tuning in. We couldn't do this without you. Share this with a friend. Let us know on social media if this resonated with you, and give at Preaching Today a follow, or Food for the Hungry a follow on Instagram or Facebook, or The Ascent Leader. Or you can always just reach out to me at Steve Ryan Carter on Instagram, or email me at steve@steveryancarter.com. Much love, everyone. Have a great week. Grace and peace.